Hi everyone, welcome back to Chinspinchats episode 9. Today I'm joined by Alan Craig. Hi Alan, how you doing, mate?
How you doing, mate? You all right?
Fantastic, mate. Thanks for coming on.
No problem at all. No problem at all.
So today, obviously, we've got a number of different things to talk about. Firstly, can we just tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely, yes. Well, I own the Craig Style Fighting System. It's been a martial arts brand which has been going on for the best part of, since the late 60s. Started originally by my uncle. And then basically as the eras have gone on, obviously I've inherited the sort of title of being the sensei and the like sort of owner of the Craig Style Fighting System. And that's what we've got. We've got like classes all around the northeast of England, Chester Street Concert, Stanley, Sacriston, Durham. And I have a gym in Sacriston as well, a personal training gym. So we're doing all right,
Nice,
we're doing all
nice.
right.
So what is it? What kind of martial arts is it? Like, is it teaching? Is it fitness? Or is it a number of different styles? Or is it?
Well, the thing that I have about like martial arts is basically once over, it was known as the Kyoto Karate Club. So it was based in karate.
Yeah.
So it was a Shotokan / Kyokushinkai base. Kyokushinkai is a bare knuckle full contact version of karate, and obviously Shotokan's more traditional.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, in a sense, agree with like sort of a lot of the things which came with karate. I love karate; it's me number one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the thing about karate and the evolution of martial arts, the way that I've perceived things is that a style is no good.
Yeah.
Like sort of, it's a bit like yourself in the MMA game. You guys will go into jiu-jitsu, and if you were a jiu-jitsu practitioner, you've got massive gaps in the striking game or the wrestling game or whatever. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So basically, a few years ago, a fair few years ago, I was talking to some students, and at the time we used to call it Craig Style Fighting Karate.
Mm-hmm.
And Gareth Taylor, Chris Taylor, two brothers, they were saying, well, why don't you just change it into some sort of like kind of system? Because at that time, before there was actually MMA classes, we were doing what is classed as MMA nowadays. We were based strikers, but my background in like sort of martial arts was obviously the karate. Then it was more sort of Thai kickboxing, but I also competed a lot in judo.
Yep.
And then we done a lot of wrestling. And then because obviously like sort of the connections that was made through me uncle and stuff like that, like sort of we had this big spanning area of like sort of martial arts. And then hence what we turned around and said, Craig Style Fighting System, because obviously if you're a style, what are you? I'm a karate man. Are you? All right, then. Okay. So what do? Well, I do loads of things.
Mm-hmm.
So, like sort of if I do loads of things, then obviously I've got to be, I've got more of a system than a style, so that's how the Craig Style Fighting System came to be.
So the people who are listening in, so karate, for those who don't know, there's a number of different styles of karate, isn't it? Because obviously I'm not sure, is it Shotokan or
Shotokan, Kyokushinkai, which is your bare knuckle full contact. You have things like Wadaru, you have Goju-ryu, Goju-kai, Shukakai, numerous amounts, Inshiru, things like that.
And there's some styles that just use like, is it called a kata or
katas?
Where it's not actually.
That's right. It's forms, So it's like movements which supposedly is like sort of a fight scenario. But again, if you look into like sort of the background of karate and stuff like that, like sort of, I absolutely love everything to do with karate, except normally the karate practitioner. I mean, one of my best mates, Brett Wilkinson, Shikari karate guy, he's a purist. He's brilliant, but he's got such an open mind, and it's very rare to find a karate practitioner with an open mind. I think a lot of karate practitioners only teach karate because that's all they know, all they love, and that will be it. It's like this. And to be honest, I just think normally they're just a bunch of wankers. You know what I mean? I do. I just think, oh my God, mate, when you're in a long stance, you're going to get your legs kicked off.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If you ever felt a proper low kick in your life, you know what I mean? Your hands are low, you're not even protecting your head. Do you know what I mean? Mate, just someone give you a bat and then just shut that big attitude up. You know what I mean? But I mean, yes. I mean, like I say, I'm a pure blood karate myself. I just see the big gaps in karate. And that's why, like, sort of through, like, obviously my beginnings in martial arts, which was when I was 3. You know, and which was Shotokan, which evolved into Kyokushin because we wanted more like sort of contact based. And then from then it was like judo, and then it was like sort of kickboxing, and kickboxing into Muay Thai, then Muay Thai into wrestling, and then went into the jiu-jitsu era, and then, you know, like sort of as everything does, it evolves, doesn't it?
Yeah,
you
for
know?
sure, right? And it all kind of interacts and ties in hand in hand, doesn't it? It's interesting, it is. So for anyone wanting to train in the Craig style fighting systems, how would they come about it? Would they contact you? Or
yeah. I mean, obviously we've got the Craig style fighting system page on Facebook. They can contact me directly, which is Alan Craig on Facebook or Instagram, Twitter as well. And basically they just either give us a ring, give us a text, you know what I mean, and they come to one of the classes and come and join our group. The beauty about our group, about the Craig style fighting system, is family orientated. So, you know, like sort of I'm a big believer in old sayings and stuff like that, you know. And one of my favorite sayings is, you surround yourself with shit, you get shit. Surround yourself with good people, good things happen. You know what I mean? So, you know, that is what the Craig style fighting system is all about. People come into our classes and it's like a family orientation. You know, like sort of I'm an absolute like sort of authoritarian when it comes to like sort of not discipline, but more like sort of just people getting on. You know, because you know, if you've got someone who you're training with, and whether you're a competitor or you're not competitor, you know, there's some what we call like sort of gym trainers. You know, like sort of they train in the gym, they don't want to compete. They can't compete because they have really good jobs. For instance, a guy who I train every Saturday, Dave McHugh. He's an accountant, old school, you know what I mean? Old school blinking student of mine. And this guy years ago should have fought, and he'd have won pretty much everything. We nicknamed him Taekwondo Dave because he was from a Taekwondo background. Everyone has nicknames, you know what I mean? Yeah.
We had a pharmacy Dave.
There you go. So Taekwondo Dave, who obviously had his Taekwondo background, came to us. He got his black belt under us. He was an absolute savage, and he's one of the most blinking posh middle class type of, don't you know? You know what I mean? He's mint, you know what I mean? But he's an absolute blinking killer, you know. And he's open, you know. He's an accountant. He earns an absolute small fortune. He's got a great career and that with it. He kind of get punched in the face, you know. He kind of walk around the black eye. So therefore, you know, but you put him on the mat, you know, and I've seen him like sort of go up against European champions and absolutely boss them. You know what I mean? So, you know, like sort of that's what I like about our classes, you know, that the standard is there, you know what I mean? But the people is there, you know, like sort of we have such a lovely like sort of camaraderie, and I think that's the big thing that like,
I think that's the thing that breeds success as well. You know, if you've got people who are training, like as is obviously a happy fight is a dangerous fight. You know, see if people are happy in the gym, that's going to bring the best out in them. You know, it's funny that you said that about the Dave Taekwondo Dave. We had a pharmacy Dave, but we also had a guy called Strong Dave. We used to call him Strong Dave. He was a fucking rugby player originally, and he'd come in. It wasn't like he didn't look like he wasn't like the most like athletic specimen. You wouldn't look at him and think, fucking hell, that guy's a monster. He was just a big, thick lad, but honestly, like fucking when he got a grip on you, or if you were trying to armbar him or anything, he would just fucking curl you. I mean, curl fish. Any one of us, you know, he's just fucking just an absolute mutant. You know, Strong Dave, and that's what he's known as. A lovely guy.
I mean, we've had, you know, you could go on about like certain nicknames. I mean, honestly, we've got some absolute horrendous ones. We had like sort of my best mate Gareth, and we call him Gareth Glitter. You know what I mean? And I mean, he doesn't get called that now because obviously he's got a missus and kids. You know what I mean? But his nickname used to be Gareth Glitter Pig Basher. You know what I mean? So never used to go why, and I used to say, well, you know, it's like it's not as like controversial as you think, but it's, you know. And people just go, what the hell are you talking about? You know, so you know, they sort of like it names, man. You know, I mean, used to nickname me Captain Jack, Captain Jack Sparrow Ankles. You know what I mean? Because I've got tiny calves. You know what I mean? So you know, you just think you sound like, you know, how am I? You know what I mean? Like sort of.
We had a Harry Ben. Ben used to come in, lovely guy, like absolute like just a kooky character. You know, just he was a bit mad and. He was just fucking righteous. And I remember it was when we were back in the Olympian days, and our little room we used to train in was about the same size as this fucking studio room, and honestly it was tiny. I had the walls matted, and he used to come in. He'd be one of them guys. Every session, someone would be putting him to sleep, or he'd be getting choked out and wouldn't tap, or he'd be running about with snot on. Just a crazy fucking character anyway. But There used to be a little window in the top of the room, like just kind of like where that little hole is up there, like a little window, and everyone, if they'd been training or whatever, if there was an old gum shield, it would always all just get chucked up there, and it was dusty as hell. Just things were just left put up there to just die, you know what I mean? And he come in one day and he's just run around, and there was fucking people there watching, and he's trying just randomly just had no gum shields. He's just randomly trying trying these random gum shields until one fit, and then just trained in it. And it's just like, what? Who is this?
I love it. I love it. You know what I mean? We had classes. I had the upstairs at Berkeley bodybuilding gym, and I mean this place. I mean, you know, you train in bare feet, but what happened was one of the like windows, which was like it was like an attic gym. And one of the windows was permanently out, so it was freezing all the time, you know what I mean? And it got to the point where pigeons started to come in, so the pigeons were just shitting all over the punching bags, you know what I mean? Everyone was like dusting it off. Yeah. You're just dusting it off so you could hit it and stuff. Sorry, I just banged that. And like you say, it was ridiculous, man, you know what I mean? Like sort of some of the stuff you do, man. We had a puking corner. And then everyone was like, what do you do in the puking corner? I said, well, you going to puke? So who mops it up? And I said, the person who puked in it. You know what I mean? It was like, that was your job. You know, if you puked, you cleaned it. You know what I mean? So
there's been some fucking funny times, man. I remember once talking about puking, man. We used to, back in the day, man, it was fucking old school, you know. It would be there, and sometimes so we'd be training, and then say Fisher would be working the door, so sometimes he would have to leave early, and it would just be us left in the gym to lock up, and we were fucking young kids, you know, so we just fucking 10 bells of shite out at each other, just belt each other. Me and Louis used to have some fucking wars, and one of the sessions Telford was there. I'll never forget it, mate. It was fucking comedy gold. Louis can clip as well, and he was sparring Telford, and Telford was a tiny bit smaller than him, like weight wise, you know what I mean? This is when Louis was a bigger kid and all, and they were just fucking swinging it out in the little room, and Louis banged him with a fucking nice clean shot and dropped him, but he dropped him to his knees. And I don't know if it was just the fact that he was so dazed or what when he was dropped, but he fucking spewed. But when he spewed on his mat, I'll never forget it, mate. Right? It was couldn't write it. When he spewed, there was a full length fucking chip come out. He spewed, so I don't know. He's been like blowjobbing these chips and like actually fucking or what, but when he fucking spewed, there was a full chip come out. It was fucking hilarious, man.
That is absolutely legend. That was fucking brutal. How do you deep throat a chip? You know what I mean?
Absolutely brutal. There was the same guy whose fucking knee blew out. He was with grappling with Warwick, and he was in rubber guard, and Warwick postured really hard, and he's tried to hold onto his leg, and when he's postured, and his legs kind of went the other way, and his knees popped out of place, and fucking ended up ambulance job, and he's fucking screaming. Ambulance come in and had to take him out in the fucking, like, it was like a big pram wheelchair thing. Take him out. He's got the cloth in his mouth and he's screaming, and I'm fucking there crying. Man, I'm a nightmare for this. Fucking drove Fisher mad for years about it, you know. Kind of once I start laughing, there's someone showing the technique or something. I'm a nightmare for it. I'm like a big kid crying, laughing. He walks out and he's screaming and this thing, and he's looking over at me and he's telling me to fuck off on his way. This class. I've seen some proper funny shit in the gym, man. It's a fucking cool place, you know what I mean?
That's what I mean. I mean, like, you know, like sort of, there's a fantastic saying, I've got it on my phone there, I look and I say martial arts, where like sort of friends like bond by punching each other in the face, you know what I mean? And it's like, you know, like you get some of the best mates by absolutely sucking them on, you know what I mean? You're like, you know, like, so, oh yeah, Yarrick, mate, yeah, good, man. You know, yeah, that was great. You
it's
know,
fucking awesome, man. So, you know, with the Craig style, so have you guys got regular competitors in different aspects, or do everyone compete in the one style, or have you got do you put your guys in? So say for instance, like, you know, as you said, you were mentioning different shows to me before we started. In MMA, it would say, right, like I've got these guys who want to fight, they're going to fight in X, Y, and Z show this year. But with your style being a specific style, do you have a specific kind of organization these guys fight in? Or do you just put them forward at different events?
No. Basically, we look for different events. The issue that I have, and I mean, you know, some agree, some disagree, is you know, it's the same as in a sense of, you have an MMA show, so you have lads who, you know, are MMA fighters, competitors, athletes, blah blah blah. But then in some MMA shows, you'll have like sort of striking matches. You know, you should have like K1 or whatever. You know what I mean? So our lot would fight in pretty much anything. The only thing we're not really well versed in at the moment is the jiu-jitsu. My jiu-jitsu it's okay, but it's not great. It would be nothing like sort of the standard of what you guys are doing. But we're like sort of my judo is where he used to be absolutely shit hot once over. I mean, wrestling shit hot as well. But the submission game for us it was never really like, you know, something that I actually enjoyed doing. It sounds so blinking hypocritical, but as much as I absolutely love the submission game, I always used to just like ground and pound. You know, I was like a big fan of the Mark Coleman, Mark Kerr sort of era, just lying on top of you and just literally just just Hulk smash them. You know what I mean? Like sort of, and that you know, it's quite a naive way of thinking things, but. When it comes to me students, it's the total opposite. I think the type of shows that we look for, again, surround yourself with shit, you get shit, is good shows with good people. There's a lot of people out there. I mean, we had a show, and I'm not going to mention any names because obviously I like the people, but you know, the show per se. And they lined up one of our 14-year-old competitors with a 23-year-old bloke. And I turned around and we turned up for that show. And by rights, you shouldn't be cutting weight, you know, on a kid, you know what I mean? And you just say to yourself, like, you know, like sort of this kid, you know, he's got a couple of pounds to lose, so we'll take that couple of pounds off. And, you know, we got him to the show there and he was warmed up and he's like, I mean, he was a big young, this 14-year-old, you know. And then I turned, look, who's he fighting? And he went, oh, am I over there? And I went, he's got a full fucking beard. And not one of these little trim beards, you know, it was down here. So it's been grown for a few years, you know what I mean? I thought, there's no 14-year-old grows a beard that long, you know what I mean? I don't care who you are. Like,
this is Cuban.
Exactly. Hairy back and everything, I would goes with it, you know? And I was like,
that guy's
exactly
right now.
So I says, you know, he's 22. I says, he's 14. You can't, is he? I says, well, you know, he's 14. I said, I've sent you it all. And he was like, oh, shit, man, sorry, I put it in the wrong one. So they tried to get him a match and they couldn't get him a match. And, you know, like sort of things like that, I was just a little bit like sort of put off by. So certain people that like obviously have shows and stuff like that, depending on like sort of the type of competitor that I'm going to put forward. For instance, we do a lot of full contact karate. So the Chinspinchats, which is a bare knuckle full contact karate. You don't do face shots. It's all punches to the body, but obviously kicks the head, body, and legs. 3 2-minute rounds minimum, normally 10 fights in the same day. Do you know what I mean? It's absolutely brutal, and it gets slated a lot for like sort of the no headshots. And I keep saying to people, yeah, but look at all your K1 greats. 90% of them came from K1, from Kyokushin. So Andy Hug, do you know what I mean? Semi Shield, Jerome Labana. You know what I mean? All the old school, like old school hard guys. You know, Glove Toza.
You know, Fatoza is the originator of the
Brazilian
that's right. Question mark. I remember. I watched a lot about it before.
And I mean, if you trained with Fatoza, I mean 6'4", and you don't look at him as like a big guy until you stand next to him. You just think, Jesus Christ, you know. And I mean, when he was whipping them kicks, and you know, everyone was saying like, you know, did they actually hit hard? Because when he was whipping them in, you could hear like the crack of the pad, you know, and we're like. So you had this like sort of line of people, you know, me included, you're holding a focus pad like that. Oh my God, it took my arm off, you know what I mean? I was like, what, bang? And you're just thinking, Jesus Christ. And he was a lean 17.5 stoner at 6'4". He was lean. He didn't even look muscly, you know what I mean? But the 17 stone, but there was 17.5 stone behind him, you know what I mean? He was an absolute monster. But all these people came from Kyokushinkai, you see, the style of karate that is my base. And then obviously that's what I competed in the most.
So in that style, so for anyone who doesn't know what are you wearing? Are you wearing a gi? Are you wearing like a kimono? Are you wearing anything? So say, for instance, how a lot of the different styles of kickboxing and stuff like that, where you can wear a boot or a shin, or what kind of
nothing.
Just
you wear the gi. Yeah, they wear the gi.
You can the leg, body, and head illegal.
Yeah. Full on. Yeah. I mean, you can strap your hands up with a little bit of wrappings, you know,
support kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of thing. But normally it's frowned upon, you know. And in between every fight, normally you've got to break boards between, and it's like a thing called showing your worth, you know. So are you strong enough to carry on? Smash these boards. Like, all right, okay, you know, smash these boards. Yeah. I've got to break him. You know, we've got to break these boards first. But apparently, what that means is normally when you break the boards, is say for instance, the fight becomes to a draw, and the referees can't make a decision. It's who smashed the most amount of boards. So that's cool, that goes to like sort of who's the hardest, you know. You're like, you know,
it's cool,
it's all right. But it's typical Japanese blinking culture, man, isn't it? You know, they're absolutely blinking batshit crazy when it comes to some of the blinking rules and that, man.
I love it, mate. I love that. Most of me tattoos are Japanese.
Yeah.
I love the whole culture of it. Especially that's why I've always said that's been a massive dream of mine forever. I want to fight there in. I nearly did. That's what we were talking about earlier. I nearly got to fight there, and hopefully it's something that one day I get to do, whether it's fucking any form of fight. It doesn't matter what it is. I'll fucking jump at the chance to do it. Even whatever way, I would just love to do it, and I just love the whole culture of it. It's especially now the way things are going now with the whole, the whole McGregor thing and the way everything's kind of the whole like smack talk and wrestling kind of mindset towards it all. It's all about building shit up, whereas the Japanese culture is not like that, what I mean? And it's all about the respect and the honor of it, and the warrior code kind of thing. And that's why I love it so much, and that's why I just think it's the purest way of being a fan for one, but as a fighter, just being in that kind of environment with that, that's all I want, a piece of it, you know what I mean?
Like I said before, the most bizarre thing I've ever experienced, is a friend of mine. He was fighting in Japan, and he says, if you ever fight in Japan, he says, you'd be surprised on how quiet the crowd is. And I says, right, and he fought in the Osaka Dome, right? So you're talking 50,000 people, right? And he went over there, and he was a Thai boxer from Manchester called Tanny. And basically Tanny turned around, Tanny says, I went over there, and he says, he says, I got knocked out. He says, I got knocked the fuck out. He says, he kicked me in this fucking head with this high kick. He says, honest to God, he says, and you see it, and you just think, shit, it's there. Bang. He says, I was down. He said, try to get up. He says, the legs are gone. He says, I heard like a, he says, that was it. He says, normally, he says, in England, Europe, America, whoa! He says to her like that. There was like a polite clap, like a, what I mean? And that was it, he says. And that's them going absolutely mental. He says, however, when you go outside, that's when they go mental. So like if the, want an autograph, or they come and see you, or they want pictures, and obviously, the Japanese like for pictures, you know what I mean? And he says, then they went mental. He says, but when you're knocking someone out inside, they're very they absorb it, you know what I mean? They get so into it, but without being like so extravagant, if that makes sense. And like I say, I experienced exactly the same. I just thought it was absolutely mental. Some of the things that we got, when you get announced to fight, and Alan Craig, Carl Pacino, right? So you're saying your name. So you stood there and you lined up, and I'm having this fight, It was the Seido World Championships. That's what it was. So potentially, if I won these next few fights, I was going to be world champion. And I'm thinking, I'm going to rip this fucker's head off. You know what I mean? I've got him. And then they announced my name, and and just something puts you off straight away. It goes, Hakaita, Ellenor Krago. And I went, Lano fucking Krago. I said, what the fuck's that? That's me. And I looked at my coach, and my coach went, that's you. And I went, that's me. And I remember looking at it, I thought, and then we were on TV as well. And it was, you just look thick as fuck. You know what I mean? And we're still cutting on the video, right? And they going. And then look at me coach going. And I'm going, and we did, because they've got their own way of saying names, you know what I mean? So like sort of Carlo Pacino, you know what I mean? There's lots of O's at the end of everything, like, you know what I mean? So you're like, what, man, But it was mint. It was mint. It was an experience and a half, Japan. I mean, anything to do with anything when it comes to the likes of martial arts over there, I don't know, they're just a different league.
They're respected a lot.
It's footballers, really. That's what they are, footballers.
It's just an amazing culture, you know what I mean? But I feel like it's obviously from way back that's been instilled in them about the kind of respect and honor of everything. So they treat people that way, and it's where it's like it's completely different now. And as I said about before, the whole kind of trash talking, that whole new generation of all that, and all the fans of it now as well. It's like people feel like they need to do that, they have to be able to get themselves out there, which is a shame, because it's kind of going that way. If you're not getting a massive following, or you're not making loads of noise, you're not getting there. And the best fighters are not getting the best opportunities, and it's
but that's exactly right, Cal. You know what I mean? I mean, to be fair, the one thing I think more than anything else, again, is, you know, like sort of this country, for instance, you know, we've got that much, and I mean, no disrespect to anyone who's listening to this, but cricket shit. Do you know what I mean? You know, I just think cricket shit. You know, you put loads of money into someone, how you get big blinking halfie at you, you know what I mean? And for those who don't speak like sort of a northern accent, a halfie is a half brick. You know, it's a cricket ball. It's a big half block of blinking. You know, it's solid. And the high and that at you, and they go click, and they stop it, and it stops there. And then you got people like that with the blinking trumpets going, and you're thinking, hello, man, you know what I mean? He's out that ball at him. If he was whacking it like baseball or something, you'd think, aye, but he's gone, nah. And you're thinking, and the amount of money they're putting into that, the amount of money. I mean, you know, like sort of, I used to train for years and years and years at Ballantyne's in Chesley Street. And we used to watch the cricket matches, you know, and when the internationals were on and people's gone mental and all this sort of thing, and I'm thinking, yeah, good atmosphere, you know what I mean? And you actually watch the game and you think, no wonder they're pissed. You know what I mean? They've got to be pissed to watch this shit, you know what I mean? You know, it's like, so you're just like, what are you going to do? One ball, so I'm just going to have a pint. You know what I mean? And then another, and then another.
You let them in the stands as well.
That's it. So it gets better, you know? Whereas like sort of obviously people like yourself and like sort of a lot of the professionals and stuff like that in the fighting game and stuff, I just don't think they get the
just desserts kind of thing.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the best ones was Russ Pearson, you know, and obviously I was one of Russ's training partners just as he turned into the ultimate, going in for the Ultimate Fighter. And obviously you had the likes of Colin Fletcher, Eddie Ying, you had Alex Enland, you had like obviously Fisher, you had like all that sort of group and stuff like that. And I mean, you got to think just out of them names there, you've got UFC, Bellator, you've got the likes of 1FC, you've got likes of K1, which is myself, and no one knew anyone, you know. And I remember me and Russ Pearson being down Chesley Street, and we went down for a drink, and Russ was down with his girlfriend, and I was down with one of my exes, and you know,
we'll not get.
She was a bitch. She was a bitch. Anyway, as we went down there, you know, and like sort of me and Russ was just sitting talking away, you know what I mean, and it was like it was just as Russ was just about to get like the recognition, really, you know what I mean? He was going in for the Ultimate Fighter, and he wasn't allowed to tell anyone, you know. And he sat us over a pint. He says, you know, he says, I'm going to do this Ultimate Fighter thing, you know. And this is really my last night out. And I said to him, I says, mint it, you know. And he says, like, if I win it, you know, he says, like, you know, I want to make a fortune. I says, well, Russ, you know, I says, good for you, mate. I says, all the hard work you put in, all the time and effort that people don't see you do. You know, they just think that these are, they go into the gym and they do bits and bobs. They don't do bits and bobs. You guys put in an absolute shit ton of stuff. And the dieting. I mean, I used to diet. When I used to diet to fight, I used to use 3 stone to fight. You know what I mean? And like sort of, you know, you used to go in like an absolute zombie, you know. And people don't realize that is probably one of the hardest things to do. And then train on top of that. You know what I mean? And I think the likes of like sort of fighters and stuff like that. I mean, Ross is a great exception because obviously he won the Ultimate Fighter. You know what I mean? But I mean, you've got some guys which were not far from as good as Ross, which just didn't get that like sort of boost. And you know, it's once in a lifetime you get an opportunity like that. I mean, you know yourself, you've been on the big stage, you know what I mean? You know what it's like. But you know, you see yourself, like, you know, people who just can't, because you've got these fucking idiot blinking cricketers getting paid blinking $5 a week. $5 a week, you know. $5 a week getting chase ball. You know what I mean? Oh my God, you know what I mean?
Put a year and can off into the sunset.
That's it. That's it. You know what I mean? That's it. Oh my
Keep
God,
good looks and just
that's it. That's it. I always remember again in Ballantyne's and Chesley Street, one of the cricketers, and he was there, and he turned around and, you know, he was like, oh. And he was standing at reception, and you know, he thought he was this shit. And me, I just came in. I've been doing some bag work. Me, mate Gareth, and he was a right arrogant prick. He was. And he used to always like look, fighter. All right, cricketer. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So anyway, he was at the counter, and I just thought I'd make some small talk because we're both waiting for protein shakes. You know what I mean? And I said to him, I says, so obviously, I says, are you away soon? Because you used to go all over the world, you know, to do like these matches and stuff like that. And he says, oh no, I'm injured. And I says, oh, you injured? I said, what you done? And he went, oh, he says, well, you know, he says, I've got a bad ankle. I said, you got a bad ankle. I said, what do you do, like sprain it or something like that? And he went, no. He says, I woke up with it. He says, and it was a bit tender and sore. He says, and then he says, it was my turn to bat. He says, and the ball bounced. He says, and I stepped to hit it. He says, and I think I put a bit too much weight on my ankle. He says, so he says, I'm out for a couple of weeks. And you know, and you just can't help your facial expression. And we were maybe a bit like that. And my mate was like that. You know, it's one of the ongoing things. And again, no offense to everyone, no offense, but it's one of our things. And he was just like that, gay. You know what I mean? Like, sort of, we were like, fucking hell, you know what I mean? If his bad ankle, he's looking cricket injury that he got from waking up, you know what I mean? And I don't know, like I say, it does me head in. I just think lads like yourselves, you know, lasses who are in the same game, you know, they need a lot more from this country than bloody cricket and stupid ass bloody football. You know what I mean? I mean, everyone loves the football, don't they? You know, but
I think another thing that will help massively with that is like grassroots stuff. So see, you know, for instance, like earlier years football stuff, they've got like associations and stuff like that. So there's across the board, there's much better sponsorship, much better like people viewing, much more people coming to see it. Whereas especially with MMA, it's getting better now, but it's still such a young thing, and obviously not being sanctioned and stuff like that. Whereas even boxing started to get a bit better in that sense, you know, getting better funding. They've got the ABE, all that kind of stuff supporting it. Whereas you've got like kind of like the IMMAF stuff started now, that's just kind of a massive thing for the amateur fighters coming up. Kind of is a kind of goal and direction, but there still should be more of a kind of support system for them coming up to help build them up. You know, create more opportunities like that. You know, give people more of a upper hand earlier on. You know, you've got people kind of wanting to tailor themselves. Right, this is what I want to do. I'm good. Or you've got some great prospects coming up, and 9 times out of 10, you see them kind of stop and actually give up on their dreams because they're struggling to kind of to fund themselves. You know.
I mean, well, the big bugbears within the martial arts, and again, it's not an offensive way for anyone. It's a fact, and a lot of guys out there who are martial artists will totally agree, is the recognition of belts. So, you know, like sort of you have your recognition of belts, and because you're not part of that association, they won't recognize that belt. So if you are a brown belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and say, for instance, you train out of, you know, your gym, you know, and then there's another gym. Again, I'm not going to mention any names because, like, you know, like it just gets bitchy, but it's fact.
Yeah, for sure.
And they don't recognize it, and they don't realize all them years that you've put in to get that belt. There was one guy, he wouldn't recognize a black belt from kickboxing, and I turned around and says, well, why wouldn't you recognize your black belt from kickboxing? And this lad, he came and trained with us, and we recognized his black belt. He was a black belt beforehand. And we says, yeah, no problem at all. And he only trained with us for a couple of months because he was working up here, and then he went elsewhere. And he says, oh no, you've got to be licensed to our association to come and train. And I said, well, not really. I says, by rights. I says, a license is if you want to grade. And they're like, no, it's your insurance. And I was like, yeah, it is your insurance, but you can sign waivers. Do you know what I mean? And this is the thing, it's like a money spinning thing. We've got so many associations out there in the martial arts where they're like sort of like, for instance, the old Peter Constantine and Jeff Thompson, who was Watch My Back, A Bouncer Story and all that sort of thing. They have the BCA, and they have their version of kickboxing black belts, karate black belts. And Peter Constantine's an absolute badass, you know what I mean? He's a legit blinking, I am killer, you know. And you've got his association, which is recognized to a lot of people, you know what I mean, and all that sort of thing, and it's great. And then you have something like NACMAS, which is like the North Styles. The BCA won't recognize any black belts from NACMAS, and yet NACMAS is an MVQ stated association. So how can you have an MVQ in something? It's like having an MVQ in mechanics and going, no, you're not a mechanic, and now we're blinking association. So you got to go and do your apprenticeship. But I've been with them for 20 years.
Like working for Renault and trying to get afford. And they're like,
nah. You know what I mean? All that means absolutely nothing. You know what I mean? Exactly. Oh, God. You talk a wrench like this, you know what I mean? You're like, oh, God. I just, that's my problem. That's my bugbear. And I think that is the divide in martial arts that obviously needs to be addressed, you know, because if the associations and them, I mean, in karate terms, they're bringing karate in the Olympics now, you know, and they were on about like sort of this thing coming into like sort of in the public eye called Karate Combat, which is a full contact version of karate. Bas Rutten, he's the head of it. You know what I mean? He's for it, and it's shite.
Is it?
It's shite. Do you know what I mean? It's just a point fighter guy who hits a little bit harder, but there's guys in the gym who will literally spar harder. You've probably sparred harder, and you got these guys, and I mean, you've got some of the world champion point fighters, which are amazing athletes. And I'm going to use the word athletes, not fighters.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between a fighter and an athlete. You know what I mean? An athlete is a person who takes care of everything. A fighter is a person who'll just stand in front of you and like have a scrap kind of thing, you know? And these guys are great athletes. They go in, they're specific, they know what they're doing, they go in, and the one thing they don't want to do in full contact is actually get hit.
Yeah.
You know, and like, sort of, I know it sounds mad, but like, you know, the ultimate fight strategy is hit him and don't get hit.
Yeah.
You know, it's inevitable, you know what I mean? However, when you've got a full contact version of karate where people can get knocked out.
Yeah.
The last 3 fights that I've seen in Karate Combat, they went shin on shin. And because they're like contactors, they don't have hard shins at all because they wear shin pads.
Yeah.
So when they're not allowed to wear shin pads and they're going in the clutch shins, they're going down on the floor, and you've got another one, and he's like, "Yes, good," you know what I mean? And I'm like, "What's he celebrating?" You know, he hasn't actually beat him; he's just clashed shins. You know, it hurts, it knocks. You know what I mean?
The worst thing in
the world. But at the same time, you know, like sort of have a bit of metal about you, mate. You know what I mean? Like sort of, you know, you've cracked the shin, it knocks, you know, and all that sort of thing. But it just, because they're not conditioned enough for the full contact, they don't put on. It's for me, it's like overpopulated. You know what I mean? Like sort of the sport karate is unreal, you know, for reaction. I mean, Lawyer to Machida, you know, like sort of Wonder Boy, you know, like sort of
adaptation of the style
they can do it. That's the thing, they can do it, and they're so unorthodox. They can do it really well. I mean, you got to think Wonder Boy put Blink Musford on his back foot, you know, and absolutely dominated the kid. You know what I mean? And I mean, you know, you just got to think like, you
knocked fucking hell, man. Bobby Knuckles, what's not Weidman, what's his name? Robert Whittaker.
Robert Whittaker.
Head kick, phenomenal. Could beat Israel Adesanya, next in line to fight Adesanya again. You know what I mean?
And I mean, Machida in his day, you know what I mean?
Everyone,
beat everyone, and like so no,
still relevant now, still fighting now, still fighting high level now. You know, he just fought, was it Bader? He just recently crazy, it's amazing. So, and again, I'm not trying to like sort of, you see, this is where like sort of the yin and yang goes with karate. I absolutely love it, but at the same time, I absolutely hate it because you know when people don't adapt it to the like the modernization of like sort of martial arts, you know, sort of it then becomes like sort of an egotistic thing, you know, where people like, I do karate, and there was this thing on Facebook, and I absolutely pissed myself at it. And what it was they were selling black belts, right? So this company was selling black belts, and what happened was, and what happens is, your black belt, if you get a silk or satin black belt, wears. So it rubs off. So it becomes grey. Now, obviously, some people like to have that grey looking black belt, and it's this stigma thing. Black belt for years.
Look at me, kind of thing. You know, and again, that's fine. You know, if you want that, that's fine. Some people just think, you know, this is the black belt that I've got. I've still got the black belt. When I first passed my black belt at 10-year-old, I've still got it. You know, but it was a cotton black belt. It's never faded. You know what I mean? And that's the thing, you know. And anyway, this company was selling faded black belts. So they were purposely rubbing the black off the belts and making it look more worn. And I thought to myself, you know, like if some people's into that, it's actually a market that hasn't been like sort of touched on. So why not? Anyway, the haters on this blinking website, you know, you should blink and do it naturally. Your belt wears and all this sort of thing through a period of time. All these people who think there's something special. And I just thought, no. And what people don't realize, the concept of the black belt is there's no such thing as a black belt. There's no such thing as a black belt. You know, the belt system and the color system in Japan was only used as a ranking system when it was introduced into universities. So it was to show a standard of how well or how far up you're going. The black belt initially wasn't even a belt. The black belt, your obi as it's called, you know what I mean?
So it wasn't the show level, it was to more show time of like dedication.
It's like, you know,
time served kind of thing.
MVQ level 1, 2, 3, 4.
Orange, red, yellow, this green, guy's fucking 10 times better than this guy, just the fact that he served his time.
It's getting through. But the whole principle behind it is your gi top and your belt was actually left in the dojo all the time. And the more you trained, the dirtier it got. but eventually turn black. And that's the principle behind it. That's the real I am. And you have people like Jesse Enkamp and all them sort of people, you know what I mean? The karate nerd, they call him. And he explains about why the belt system goes on and so on and so forth.
So what would happen with these gis and the kimonos that were left? Would they be washed in the gym?
Nope.
Or no?
They just left there stinking, mate. You know what I mean? And the idea was that's it. Because like you see, they come in and they wonder why they've got like like fungal infections and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Come digging, you know what I mean? I mean, to be fair, I mean again, like sort of some of the lads who trained with me in the years gone by said like, like I was probably one of the most smelliest thinking like sort of training partners going because I never washed my gi, you know what I mean? And they should put on me like, fuck no, you stink. And I turn to exactly. There's a bit of space between it, doesn't it? You know what I mean? And they're like, that's seriously, so like once every couple of months I used to wash my gi. And in the end, like you say, when it got a bit crispy and stuff, I used to think, I really need to push it now, But that's the legitimate part of how like the black belt system goes. And to go back to the Facebook thing, these haters about these like sort of worn belts, it's a disgrace, you shouldn't do it, blah blah blah. And I just said to him, I says, you need to stop crying, you know what I mean, about shit like this, man. I says, if someone wants it, they can have it. Anyway, I had this guy come on, and he was mint. Alan Craig, you're a bitch ass fake, blah blah blah. You need this thing called dojo kun, which apparently is like sort of rules and regs and stuff like that of your dojo. And you understand what the blinking true concept of karate is. And I couldn't stop laughing, you know what I mean? I was like, oh my God, this guy literally, he's one of these like sort of extreme, like sort of karate nerds, you know what I mean? And blah, blah, blah. And you're just thinking, mate, it's a fucking black belt. Your black belt you've got round your waist. And by the looks, because I had to Facebook stalk him, I had to look, and I looked, and this guy's got a guitar sideways. And I thought, fucking hell, no wonder he says stuff like that, because obviously he's a rock star. Do you know what I mean?
This guy gets the pussy.
That's it. He gets everything. You know what I mean? He's got 20 black belts. You know what I mean? He's dojo cunt. It's a dojo cunt. You know what I mean? That's all he is. He's one of them ones where if he's blinking sensei, he says, right, suck me dick. He'll be like that. Yes, that's it. You know what I mean? And he just applies it. And no doubt it'll be the best blowjob he's ever had in his life. You know what I mean? Because it's done with dojo kun. You know what I mean? Stroke the bollocks while you do it, mate. You know what I mean? Yes, Auntie, And like, you just think, oh my God, some extremists, man, just really, really get a grip, So, like to go back to everything which goes about the martial arts is blending styles, you know what I mean? Is like sort of what like sort of I like to do, like sort of hence why we call it a system. I like the crack. I love crack, I love the thing that like your students and your training partners and stuff like that can just take the mick out of you. They can like sort of give and like, they can take it as well. Yeah. And as you say, like sort of happy fighter is a dangerous fighter in it. You know what I mean? It's got that sort of appliance.
So, for people that don't know, so you've got a book. Is it out or is it coming out?
It's coming out. Yeah, we the publisher who I spoke to, it's coming out in September. We've been all about what we've just spoke about. It's all about anti-bullying. But obviously, like sort of my family being the main martial arts family of the Northeast. In the 80s, the Craig family was like massive. Bobby Craig, who was my uncle, he was the guy really who brought karate to the area, to the UK in a sense of, you know what I mean? Because, in them days, his karate class was 150 students, Monday, Wednesday, Friday night. A five-a-side hall used to be taken top to bottom with 150 people lined up. And that was 3 times. Where would you ever get that nowadays? You know what I mean? And, this is what our class is, the Bruce Lee era, you know what I mean? It was so popular in them days. But my Uncle Bob had such a good, like, sort of rapport with his students. And obviously that was transferred onto the likes of myself and my cousins, Andrew, Stevie, and my other cousin, Lee, bless him. He's not with us now, but, like sort of, we just absorbed it, we loved it. But then we had like an unfortunate part where I went for my black belt. I went to do my black belt, and old school karate meant that you had to be basically on your knees in like a boxer position, it's called, you know what I mean, when you're waiting for your turn. Now, the thing was, sometimes if the gradings were going on, you were sometimes there 3/4 of an hour, nearly an hour on your knees. So you were so stiff by the time you stood up. So I was about 9-year-old at the time, and I noticed my dad, Brian, bless him, he had a bad leg. So, you know, like sort of when I was at this grading, and obviously I'm trying to like sort of do this black belt grading, I was distracted. My dad was in absolute agony. And I was looking, and like, you know, to the point of where my uncle was like, he was concentrating on my dad, you know, he's like, "You all right, Brian?" And I mean, we had to travel, I think we had to travel down to London, somewhere like that. And I failed the black belt, failed it, you know, and there was massive complaints about it and stuff like that, about like, you know, if the person's waiting to do their grading, can they not just stand at the side, keep themselves warm? You know what I mean? Instead of doing this blinking boxer position, you know, and where people are getting up stiff as hell. So I failed it. And then basically what happened was, on the way back, we ended up like sort of having to, you know, get a doctor for me dad and stuff like that. And it was a couple of weeks later, he was trying to go to work and he was in agony with this leg. And then unbeknown to us, one morning I woke up, he ended up being on the city in agony. My mum phoned an ambulance because he was in that bad. He ended up in hospital and ended up we found out he had cancer. And basically what happened was he had lung cancer, but it obviously had riddled his body and it ate his leg bone, his femur. It ate it through, you know, it snapped. And that's what he was in agony with. And he ended up dying on Christmas Eve. So a 10-year-old, should I say, he died on Christmas Eve. And you know, like sort of, I didn't really want to do karate and stuff like that not long after that. You know, it just seemed a bit of a shit time, like, you know. But what happened was, obviously after that, we started secondary school. And when I went to secondary school and stuff, as kids do, and you know, the school I went to, Tanfield, at that time it was a horrendous school. You know, it was full of bullying. It was full of blinking teachers which just wouldn't listen. You know, and unfortunately, I was one of the people who got bullied, and I was called Alan the Bastard, and a bastard is a fatherless child. So of course, me being me, you know, not really a fighter by any means in them days at all. I hated fighting. You know, I hated sparring in them days, and yet, you know, I won everything. You know what I mean? Like if I did competitions, it was karate competitions, I'd win it. I go into, you know, the point fighting competitions, I'd win it. I'd go in continuous, I'd win it. But I just didn't like it. I was petrified of it. You know, I didn't like fighting at all. And then when they started the Alan the Bastard thing, you know what I mean? Like I didn't like that. So it ended up with a kid called Kevin, and he came over and he started like mouthing on. He was with this group. So, you know, you lose your temper and you flog, and I absolutely flogged him. You know what I mean? But before I knew it, there was 7 or 8 of them on us at the time. And then there's a couple of kids on years older. And in the end, it got from 10-year-old through to 14, 15, thereabouts. There wasn't a week where I wasn't absolutely decimated. Like, you know, I was braid all over the shop off this group. And then older kids used to think it was hilarious to come in and just have a go because obviously everybody else was having a go. And then it got to the point where, like, sort of, because my mum had obviously just lost my dad and stuff like that, my mum was really struggling. And my uncle Bob, who obviously was the karate man, he tried his best to like pull in, and he ended up getting us back through me, like, you know, into me karate, and ended up passing me black belt and then going on from there. And it got to the point where, like, so the bullying was that severe that I lost my hair. I got alopecia through it, you know, and it's never grew back. It's never grew back. It's never grew back. But as the years went on and stuff like that, you know, like sort of you become a little bit more streetwise, you know. And I always say to people who's always taking a good beating, you know, you experience a good beating. And I mean a good beating, you know, to the point of where, like, you know, like sort of no matter what you do, no matter what you try, there's nothing you can do. You know, like you know, you're hitting him and you're thinking, you know, I'm gonna get, and then you get 3 or 4 coming on the sides, and there's nothing you can do, you know, so you just got to curl up. And then they used to pin you down. And then when they used to pin you down, you used to like sort of get one of them used to stand on your bollocks. And you used to stand on your balls, and you used to open your mouth and you used to spit in your mouth. You know what I mean? And then to the point where, like, you know, you could just feel yourself, just the rage, you know, that I had when I was a young one was just absolutely, like, you know, but there was nothing I could do. And people didn't want to knock about with me as well, because the people who were my friends at the time, they were going to get braid as well. So what happened was, obviously, was the simple fact of the matter that I lied. You know, I told my mum everything was fine, you know, like sort of, obviously I was going and training with my uncle, and then I was going to train with a few other people. I went boxing, and but I did basically it all on my own, and I didn't actually get any friends until I was about 15. All the black guys would tell me, oh, it's off boxing. Oh, right, okay, you want to blink and what you selling that boxing? So my granddad was a boxer, you see. My granddad was like a champion, and he had turned around, he was like, sort of, that's not a boxing, son, but I used to lie and say it was. And I ended up training with a guy, and his name was Ken Newton.
Yeah.
And he was SAS, he was ex-SES, he was ex-Special Forces. And basically, he used to have this, in them days, it was like street fighting classes and stuff like that. And I got introduced to him through a couple of people who had done the boxing and like sort of the karate and that with. And, as being a young'un and stuff like that, I was kind of too young to do it.
Yeah.
But I just persisted, like nothing they were going to do in that class wasn't what I already had 10 times over. And if I was walking home from school or whatever. And then it got to the point where like sort of they're kind of accepted us in. And one of the things is like, when you're in that predicament and when you're in that like sort of panic, sort of
state,
that's the word I'm looking for, state. So in that panic state, he says it's all about the freeze, fight or flight. Choose one person and make sure he has to get it. You're going to take a beating, you've got to accept it. You're going to take a beating regardless, but you're fucking mine. I'm going to fucking bite your bollocks off if I need to. And that's the end of it. My hand's going to go down your pants. I'm going to get your little dick. I'm going to pull the fucker off. You know what I mean? And that's going to be it. And I'm going to set my teeth into the side of your face. And I'm going to bite chunks out here, And then that's kind of what happened, And before I knew it, I'd held many dicks. But in a nice way. And we'll get that out there straight away. I'm not into that. My wife, Shelley, love you very much, But, like sort of, it's one of them things, and that's how I survived in a sense of, it became like sort of, it became more animalistic, like sort of all the skills that I had, because again, I was still winning everything in competition. I was boxing, I was doing all right, and then, but when you've got these multiples, and in the end, they started fearing me because they didn't want to be the one
who was getting the
fucking eye. Yeah, so they started backing off. So I thought, this is great.
This guy's not beating
yeah. He's gonna grab my dick. Yeah. It's like that, like a baby. You grab his fucking dick and twist it. You know what I mean? Go dick twist. Yeah. That was me. Ultimate dick twister. And.
No, I know what you mean. Although they didn't want to be the one to say like, if we're all going to jump this kid, I don't want to be the one who sets his sights. Getting fucked up.
Exactly right. And like sort of it got to the point where things actually started to steady down. Unbeknown to me, on the last day of school, obviously all my lessons and that I actually had to have like sort of in a different classroom with the headmaster, because they would just sit about, in a class, and I'd be sitting doing my work, and they just walk over and just bang, and then that would be it, it'd be all up. And, like sort of, for a person who never started a fight in his life, I don't understand why, like sort of it was me, but then again, they choose an easy target.
Yeah.
They see a sign of weakness, obviously they see in the fact that obviously I really pined for my dad, we're very close. And they just took that and blinked and acted straight on it. But then it got worse, because what happened after, like say the last day of school is I had some friends there. John Pickford, bless him, he died a few years back. He was a great guy. And Simon Owen. And these two guys had knocked about with me in the last like sort of year of school kind of thing, and we had a good relationship with the lads. And I knew these lot were going to try and set about us on the last day. I thought, Jared, it's going to be the opposite way around. I'm actually going to go for him, And I remember at the time, because they'd been nearly 78 months. And in that 78 month, I'd had like a few boxing fights and stuff like that. So without being like what I call a Yakuzuki man, where you punch from the hip, and like sort of have that long karate shot, it was tucked in, and everything, everything was like, everything was like a lot more legit, you know what I mean? And I actually hadn't hit anyone apart from sparring, you know what I mean? I thought, fuck this, I'm going to get them, like, you know what I mean? And I went out and I remember, and they're all stood there blinking, and just whack, whack, whack. And I hit three hit the ground, and I was just like that. Get in, you know what I mean? I thought, there we go, that's it. And anyway, the rest of them dispersed straight away. Douche, they were away. I thought myself, that's it, it's good. And it wasn't, it was the complete opposite. It ended up being worse. because you know what happened then was they ended up like basically going to see someone, and this person or these people, I was 15, 26-year-old, that's what they were, dormant from a concert, big steroid heads, big blinking pill dealers, stuff like that. And basically what they said was that I'd pinched a pair of jeans off his washing line. And it wasn't me, you know what I mean? And I remember walking to see it, like one of my first ever girlfriends, you know, and I walked in and I had about 10 guys pull up, but this main group of 5. And I always remember that a larder, you know, the old crappy larders, and they were window cleaners, but they weren't. It's what they pretended to be, but they were obviously drug dealers, dormant at the weekend and stuff like that. And you've nicked my fucking jeans. And I says, no, I haven't. I says, like, you know, I says, like, you know me, mum. And he went, oh, I don't know you, mum. And I was like, you do? I said, you know me? No, you don't. I said, and next thing you know, and I mean, the kicking that I'd taken from the blinking kids at school, you know, when you've got a 26-year-old muscle flipping roided up blinking monster, he beat the fucking shit out of me, and his mates just put the boot in, and I was crippled. And that was it. And it got to the point of where until I was about just after 18. Again, it was a weekly thing. They drive around in the cars because they know better to do when they were selling the pills. They just come, and I used to have to walk from East Stanley, where I lived, to Stanley to go to the gym or to go wherever and see my friends. And I used to have to get different routes to walk avoid. Because you used to just pull up, jump out, berets. But then again, you know, it got to the point again where, you know, you just had enough. And I just thought, you know, like sort of once again, I'm on the receiving end of beatings when I've really done nothing. And I thought, I'm not having this. So I tried to fight back. But again, you kind of didn't know when there's that many people. And when they're like a man, when you're just still a child, really, when you think about it. And it got to the point where it got really rough, like really bad. Police was called, like in restraint orders and all this sort of thing. And it didn't stop them. And it didn't stop them at all. And it got to the point of where, like, sort of, again, my hair fell out again, you know, the alopecia kind of thing. And I don't know, and it like, I was constantly just lying to my family, you know what I mean, saying that I was all right. Even when the police were going, I'm all right, you know what I mean? And I wasn't, you know, if I just told them the truth, it'd been ideal, you know what I mean? Because then we understood why I was acting so, like, sort of bizarre. And it got to the point where it wasn't long just before my 18th birthday party. I think it was about 3-4 months before. And this person in question, again, I'm not going to say any names, but he came over with his crew and started, you know, effing and blaming. I thought, just hit him. Just take a beating, just him. And bang, I hit him, and he was out. Boof. And I thought, first time. And I thought, there we go. And I thought, shit. And you know, and you just admiring what you're doing. Next thing I know, whack on you and whack on you. And before I knew it, I thought, fuck, just run. So anyway, I ran. And because obviously I was still dazed to try to run, I wasn't running very well. And one of the lads who ran straight behind us kicked my legs away. And anyway, this person then came to, they dragged us on the end of the curb, and they jumped on my kneecaps and slapped both my kneecaps. You know what I mean? So I ended up with, one kneecap. They jumped on both. That one was twisted, but that one was snapped. And again, I went back and I had to say to my ma, she said, how the hell you done this? Or, like, you know, I jumped off a wall and I, like, hurt it, you know. I didn't say that obviously it was guys actually, like, beating the shit out of us again, you know. And we had, like, so the 18th birthday party, and then the 18th birthday party came, and I mean, it was this deep in snow in January, and I had a great night until the end of the night. And then we went to the local nightclub and stuff like that, and before I knew it, they were there waiting for my 18th birthday. And they beat the shit out of us on the 18th birthday, at the point of where, you know, like, sort of a lass who I know who tried to, like, sort of like, help us kind of thing. She covered us. She ended up getting knocked out. They knocked her and a man. And a man was about like 44, I think she was 45. And the man ended up in traction.
Shit.
I ended up, like, you know, like, I was just out cold. He just braided me. I mean, I was more drunk. It was my 18th birthday party. But this last was knocked out. So there's 3 were lying in the snow. You know what I mean? And this was just the mentality of these people. So when all that came to, and by this time I'd been consistently training, you know, training. But I was training with, like, people, you know, me uncle, it kind of taken a bit of a sideline on things. And we then started with the like sort of full contact karate, Thai kickboxing, and then like sort of I stayed away for a long time. I went away, you know, and I came back about a year and a half later. I was nearly 20-year-old, and I remember going to my mum, and I was cutting my mum's bushes, and there's this person over the road talking to this other lad, and I turned around and looked, and I thought, you know what it is, I'm gonna fuck you up, mate. So I went over and I just said, "Oh, this is me and you need to sort something out. Yeah, fucking tail if you nick your fucking jeans, blah blah blah." And I says, "You fucking idiot, you didn't know I nicked a pair of jeans." I says, "You know, in fact, I didn't." I says, "But you're gonna pay for what you've done to me." So I says, "In this blinking field." Later on, we're meeting the East Stanley Cricket Club, Bournefield. So I says, "Right." Anyway, I rang my cousin, proper naughty lad, like, you know what I mean. I says, "Right, get some lads together. I'm gonna have a square up with this blinking person." No bother. Went down, I beat the fucking shit out of him. Beat the shit out of him. And again, you go back to this like old sayings and stuff like that. You can't bench press people to death.
Yeah.
And you can't build muscles on your chin. And you see all these roided up animals. And I realized, you know, he's only good at hitting a kid. And when this kid actually developed into like a young man, and through the training that I've been doing and some of the people that I was training with, especially one person, I haven't seen him in years, but a big shout out to Graham Whaley. He was world record holder. Chin-ups, press-up, squat, sits. His wife died of cancer and he devoted his life to fitness. Done all these world records. You know, he's an absolute monster. And he kind of took us under his wing when it came to like sort of the physical aspect, you know what I mean, of like sort of training. So I was training with him, and then I was boxing, and then I was doing karate, and then I was going to do kickboxing. And then my friend Ken Smith was taking us to do the judo and stuff like that. And I was competing in judo. And I got the silver medal in the nationals and stuff like that, you know, only fight I lost, like professional fight anyway. And I turned around, I was like sort of, you know, like sort of, it was a different animal, you know what I mean? So when this blinking person came and I beat the shit out of him, and then the other 4 of his crew were there, and I was like, next, and I went through all of them, you know, and it's so funny afterwards, because obviously you have a fight with a you know, like a 17 stone monster. And I mean, I was about blinking 12 stone width through, you know what I mean, if that. And I braid him, and I braid his steroid mates, and you know, it was amazing. We went to Stanley Cricket Club for a pint afterwards, and I walked in, and my cousin who came in with us, and we didn't realize they'd all been watching. So they're all sitting at the bar, and apparently they'd been watching, like sort of scrapping. They came in and went, "Hey, by the way, lads, you know, oh no, we just want a pint." And I was like, "Yeah, just have a pint," you know. So like, right, so I'm sitting there, and like, obviously my jaw was knocking, you know what I mean? Sitting there, and I just thought to myself, you know, that's it, like, you know, and I'm not getting bullied again.
So is that what kind of brought you into kind of wanting to prevent other people doing that, like with the book? So
big time, yeah.
So in the book, you know, when you see the book's coming out, what is it about your experiences, or is it about like training, or is it just like your story of what helped you?
It's both. It's actually a two-parter. Because there was that much went into my early life and stuff like that. I mean, obviously we've scratched the surface. If you read the book, it goes a lot more in depth. There's a few nasty things that I'm not going to mention on here that obviously is in the book that you'll have to read, that these guys do to me. You know what I mean? I mean, like I say, it is horrendous. The book was like sort of years later. I was getting counselling, and it was basically when I won my last world title, and basically, to cut a long story short, I'd lost a fortune. I put money in businesses, and you know what I mean, bloody exes and all that sort of shit. You know,
as you do,
like, you know, like, so I was on the bones of my ass basically, and I you know, as my sponsor at the time had said, like, you know, we'll pay for some counselling. So I says, right. And he says, you know, he says, your life is absolutely mint, you know. He says, but he says, it all starts really ugly. And I says, I know. He says, why don't you just write about it? And I says, well, you know, I'm phonic. I spell the way I speak. You know what I mean? I said, I'm not that good when it comes to English. And he says, well, I've got to disagree on, you know, he says, you've got 2 degrees and 2 master's degrees. You know, he says, you're very intelligent. He says, but obviously in your fields, just write it. And then spell check will do the rest. You know what I mean? And I was like, right, I'll try it. So I started writing it. And before I knew it, it took me nearly 3 years to write. And then I got speaking to a guy who is he's an archaeologist, and he's had some books published in archaeology. And I turn around and says, "Oh, I says, like, I would love to get my book published." And he says, "Well, you know, sometimes people's got to like proofread it first." So when I obviously said to him, like, I says, "Would you give that to that person, you know, and see if they would like have a little read of it?" And they came back, and she turned around, she says, "I was in absolute tears, you know." She says, "It was absolutely cutthroat, you know." She says, "It was really, really well written." I was like, "Was it?" And she was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Right, okay, no problems." And she says, "Well, like, is there any chance, like, sort of, I can have a meet with you?" So yeah. So I met this lady, and she said, like, you know, she says, "You've got an absolute winner on here." And then she said, "I just can't believe the type of person that you are now." She says, "You know," she says, "you're like so bubbly and like out there kind of thing, you know," she says, "and like, you know," she says, "to come from that to that." And I says, "Yeah," I says, "because that there is what's made us this here." You know, I says, and it's when people delve and dwell in the past, you know, I've got demons and all this sort of thing. And again, anyone who's got that, you know, I feel really sorry for you guys, but me, I'm not the type of person, I won't allow it, you know, I'll not be beat. You know, and that's what I took over when it came to like sort of the opportunity. When not long after I beat the bullies, I had a phone call, and at the time it was a guy called Sean Smith. He was training us, and he turned around and he says, "You know," he says, there's the World Championships in Poland, you know, Kyokushinkai, bare knuckle full contact." He says, "Do you want it?" And I went, "Yeah, I want it." So we went from there, and that's how like sort of the end of the first part of the book goes. You know, it's like the trials and tribulations of like a nearly horrible childhood in a sense, you know, to then the second part of the book that I'm actually just finishing as we are now, which is just an absolute rodeo roller coaster of blinking like a rock star lifestyle, really, without the drugs. And like, you know, like sort of I'm as green as grass in that sense, you know, but like sort of like some of the stuff it just goes mental, you know. So I done my first ever World Championships, and I got the semi-final, and I was breezing it, and I thought, you know, I'm going to be world champion here. And it was this guy he's wincing, you know, he couldn't cope with the punches I was throwing into his body, and just got a bit cocky, and I just threw this punch, and I just hit the tip end of his elbow, and I just felt my wrist snap. You know, I was like, fuck. So anyway, luckily the kid just turned away, he couldn't want to fight anymore, and that was it. So I was due to the final, and I was thinking myself, mid, but my arm was literally throbbing. And I was saying to my coach, like, you know, can we sort this out? And he was like, "Oh, no, you know what I mean? That was broken half, that, you know." And I was like, "It doesn't matter, just strap it up." And anyway, I seen the doctor come in. He was like, "Can I have a look at your wrist?" And I was like, "No." He was like, "I need to look at your wrist." I was like, "No." I was like, "There, that one." He's like, "No, the other one," you know. And I was standing going, "But this is the one which is hurting." And he went, "I know it's that one." He says, "That one, it's up like that," you know. And he never let us fight in the final. And I was gutted, you know, like obviously that was 19. And it took me nearly another 5 years before I could actually win my first world title. And the wrist, to be fair, it wasn't broke. I felt it snap, but it was dislocated. So by rights, I just need popping back in, kind of thing, if that makes sense, you know. And like sort of, I was just sat beside, I was stopping, and the two lads in the final. The lad who I just beat got put back into the final. So I knew I'd beaten him, and he ended up winning the World Championships. And I was like, "You knob," you know what I mean? Like sort of that. I absolutely, I toused him, you know what I mean? And that's where it started. That's where the second part of the book starts. And the Great White Hopeless, that's what I call it, you know, because like I said before, we went and we ended up with a fight record of 243 fights in 243 wins. I never got beat. But at the same time, you know, the full contact karate era, the K1, the kickboxing, I had a couple of fights in MMA and stuff like that, you know. I absolutely loved it. It was my life, to the point where I think I'd still to this day, I didn't grow up till I was in my mid-30s. You know, I was such a blinking, like, I don't know, like, I just loved it. You know what I mean? Like, sort of, not the fighting. Like just the lifestyle of it, you know. I met so many nice people, and it was great.
So that brings on another thing. What you mentioned in the description of what we're going to be covering today was the comic books. Comic books. I've always loved Spider-Man before school all the way through, X-Men, all that. I've always loved that, you know what I mean? I've got some comics in the house, so I was just going to ask your take on that, you know what I mean?
Right, so comics, right. So obviously, Batman, you know, 100% Batman. And
so you're a DC guy mostly, or
I believe it or not, no. Batman is my favorite.
Yeah.
But when it comes to comics and stuff like that, like sort of, I started collecting comics not even as a young age. It was actually in my early 20s.
Yeah.
I started making some decent money. I was working the doors, and I was getting a bit of blinking money from the fights and stuff, you know. And I was going to Forbidden Planet and places like that, you know. And I was going there, and I was like, it was, like, say, it's my favorite shop in the world, you know. And I go there, and I just thought, like, you know, I'm getting these graphic novels and these comics and this, that, and t'other. And before I knew it, like I say, you know, like sort of I had a canny old collection.
Yeah.
And then to the point now where my wife, obviously, me stepson, my son, anyone who wants, you know, Christmas, birthdays, Father's Day, blinking, my dog's day, my dog's birthday, we've all got to get presents, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you want? And I said, well, when you ask that question, comics, you know what I mean? So I'm in the thousands and thousands.
I'll see if I can rip one of mine. I've got a pretty cool one. It's still in the cellophane thing. Batman one from years ago. I'll find it. We've just moved house. That's all. So everything's we've been moved in. We're setting that now. But there's still a load of our stuff in boxes. I'll break it out and I'll send you a photo.
Definitely, mate. Definitely. Well, like I say, I mean, my mate Brett, who I was on about the Shikari Karate Kai there, me and him are absolute blinking comic nerds, you know. So I'm Batman and he's Superman, and then like sort of I love Captain America as well, kind of thing, you know. And like sort of, I mean, the new Marvel universe that's came out with the movies, but they've just absolutely nailed it, you know. Whereas I think the DC they're just average, you know, like sort of the last Snyder cut that they've done for the Justice League, the 4-hour long one, I thoroughly enjoyed that. And hopefully this new Batman, which is coming out with Robert Pattinson.
I think that looks really good.
I think that'll be good. And I love the Joker film.
Which one, the Joaquin Phoenix one?
Yeah,
the best one ever. I actually personally think that performance in I love Heath Ledger, but I think the Joaquin Phoenix one is the best performance of amazing.
It just absolutely blew me away. Like, you know,
I've watched that. I must have watched that film 6-7 times now, easy. I fucking love it, you know what I mean?
Like sort of the people that don't like sort of know comics and stuff like that is you know, like the Suicide Squad. And I actually love, and people don't like him, right? But I actually love Jared Leto.
I've met him twice.
Have you?
I've met him twice.
Legend.
I have met him twice.
Aye. He's a good looking bloke. Him, like, you know what I mean? He's mint, like, you know, he's got everything about him, like, you know. But I loved his take on the Joker as well, because again, not many people engage. You've got to be a hardcore DC, but you've got to know the Frank Miller crap. And the Frank Miller, obviously, they've done the Batman Returns and all that sort of thing, like the aged Batman when he comes back. And if you have a look at like the early things, and there's actually a Frank Miller novel called Batman and Robin and the Boy Wonder. And that's an earlier one of where the same Batman, the Frank Miller Batman, who's obviously in the Dark Knight Returns, is in his prime. And basically, like sort of, it's how he and like sort of Robin come to be, kind of thing. It's very gritty. But if you see the Joker in them days, the proper Joker, he is the Jared Leto Joker. He's got the big tattoos all over him and stuff like that, you know. And people are like, the Joker doesn't have fucking tattoos. And I was like, you don't know shit. You know what I mean? If you follow the proper...
Originally, it was a lot darker, wasn't it? That was it back in the day. It was a lot more kind of deranged, I want to say. Like, it was a lot darker, wasn't it? Sinister.
I mean, there's a thing, you know, called Truckier, which is a Batman story called Truckier, and that's apparently after Jason Todd dies, you know, the Red Hood. And that's where they go... Like, so they put Bruce Wayne into like a really, really dark place. And then obviously some silly things, like, you know, like, well, it's just silly, but if you're into comics, it's a good thing. Where like sort of as he's Bruce Wayne, Alfred turns around and says, you know, when you're in your Bruce Wayne persona, you know, you're talking with that growly voice like you do when you're Batman, and he can't diversify, he can't change. You know, so normally he's Batman's alter ego is Bruce Wayne. He's not Bruce Wayne. You know, he's Batman. Bruce Wayne's his alter ego. It's a bit like Clark Kent. You know, he is Clark Kent, and Superman's his like alter ego. You know what I mean? And like the Truckier, like sort of storylines, a really dark one where Batman's just struggling being anything bar Batman. You know what I mean? But DC actually got like sort of, there was hell on with it. They wanted them to like sort of like lighten things up a little bit because it got a bit too dark. You know what I mean? And I just thought to myself, you know, like sort of, no, you need to keep that going. And then obviously they lightened it up a touch, and then you had like what they call the new 52. And it was the new take on all the DC heroes and stuff like that, and that went really dark again. And I loved it.
Yeah, I
thought
that's the way it should be.
Yeah, dark and gritty.
Well, I think Marvel hit it right when they did the was it the Wolverine that was already
and
I think obviously I know it's comic books, and I know it's already got that whole massive thing of it being a cartoon or comic evolved thing, but I think that's the way they should be, you know, it
definitely
so much more enjoyable.
Definitely. You know I mean, don't get me wrong, all the Avengers films are great, you know what I mean? Sure, brilliant, you know. But as you say, you know, you put a bit of R-rated. I mean, Deadpool, flipping mint, you know what I mean? And some people go, you know, it's not. And I say, but if you look at the comic depiction of Deadpool, it is Ryan Reynolds. It is Ryan Reynolds. It's language, it's blinking obscurities, you know what I mean? It's mint, you know.
That's it.
I mean, there's another thing at the moment which is on Netflix, and people haven't watched it. And again, you know, you just like, you need to watch it, Jupiter's Legacy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Jupiter's Legacy. If you follow the comics again and stuff like that, they're so raw.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Image Comics and things like that, you know what I mean? And of the Invincible cartoon, which is on there at the moment, you know, and you watch that and people are like, what the hell, you know, he's actually like, they're probably killing each other, you know, this cartoon, they're probably killing each other, you know. And I'm like, nah. I was like, that's like the comics. And like, really? And I was like, yeah. But like, you know, like if people want like a good comic book to read, you know, if anyone turned around and said they want more manly comics than actual like sort of, you know, like sort of book, come on, Bookie, let's go, you know what I mean? Punisher Max.
Yeah.
Max Prince. You know, the 18 like sort of Garth Ennis stuff, you know what I mean? Like he done Preacher and all that sort of stuff, you know.
No, exactly.
And you know, like so the Punisher Max is just absolutely brutal. You know, you're talking eyes getting pulled out, you're talking like sort of horrible things he touches on, like sort of pedophilia, right through to rape and like, you know, just blood, like mess, gore, everything's just so raw and nasty. Best comics I've ever read, to be fair. Like, you know, the Punisher Max ones are mint.
I'll have to check them out, mate.
Definitely, mate. Definitely, without a doubt.
Well, I'll have, if you're cool with that, I'll have to see you. I can get you on again anytime you want, if that's enough.
Definitely, mate.
Cover the areas you want to.
Yeah. I mean, before we go, like I say, the one thing obviously I want to like sort of quickly ask you, you know, because obviously what especially with the Craig style fighting system that we always follow our morals to be like sort of martial artists and stuff like that. What's your morals on, like, you know, because like even though he's doing the interview, I'm going to ask him some questions, you know what I mean? Because I like that, you know what I mean? If you get a good opportunity, why not use it? You know what I mean?
I love it. That's it.
Like sort of, you know, because a lot of the Craig style fighting system you're watching, and obviously a lot of people when I've told them about you and stuff, they're like, oh, he's fighting Bellator, you know, like, you know, you need to follow him, and they're like, can you tell the Craig style fighting system a little bit about yourself, please, mate?
Yeah, I'm just a little lad from Northeast, Sunderland, born and raised, and so I originally started off as a boxer, boxer Sunderland ABC from being 12-year-old till I was 18. I had 26 fights there, but I won a gold belt in 2006, lost the junior ABA finals 2007, won the boys club, got to the boys club semi-final, missed weight there and got kicked out of the tournament then, so I got a bronze medal in that there, so did that, and then fought after that, went senior, had a couple of fights there, and then started MMA. That's when I first started grappling. Started grappling for TFT when I was 18-year-old, and then started obviously diving into wrestling and all that, and changing my style to work for MMA. And then had a fight when I was 18. I had my first MMA fight. I think it was 18 or just turning 19. It was around about that time. Had my first MMA fight for Fisher, and then by the time I had my second fight, I'd focused primarily that much on me grappling to be able to anti-grapple and not get submitted and get back to my feet. That became kind of more of me base, even though I boxed for that many years, you know. I would then use my boxing to kind of set up me grappling and me cage control and stuff like that. So me boxing then became a range finding thing to set up me wrestling and everything else. And then I won my next fight by submission, and then my next fight by submission, and then my next fight by submission, and then went pro. And I won. It was used to be Strike and Submit. Changed its name to Supremacy. I won a British title on that, and then that was like pro now. And then I won that my pro debut by submission, and then went from there. And most of my wins have been by submission, you know. I mean, even at me pro, I think most of me pro, I've had 8 pro wins, and I think 6 of them have been submission wins, you know what I mean? And just went from there, you know. I went through fighting domestic circuit, went from fighting local shows, fighting Scotland, and then fought on ACB, which is a big Russian show. They give us a fight. I fought there. It was the Manchester Arena, sorry. And then after that, I signed AFC in South Africa. I had my first fight in Johannesburg there, and then went from there and fought in Cape Town. Then I fought for their world title. And then obviously from that led us to then fighting for Bellator, and then had my first fight for them at the Metro Radio, and then fights after that ended up getting pulled for whatever reason, different thing, and then that led us on, and then I just fought the main event there in Milan in the T-Mobile Arena in Italy. You know what I mean? Fucking cool. You know what I mean?
So just a quick question, because this is the one thing that I go on a lot with my students and stuff like that, is the evolution of martial arts and stuff like that, as we spoke about earlier on. But as a professional fighter nowadays, do you think like sort of anyone up and coming in the professional sort of circuit, can you make a living out of it, do you think, nowadays?
For sure, you know, if you get the right opportunities. I mean, it's a very small percent of people that will make money from it, which is cruel to say, but it's right, you know. It's I mean, I've been one of the ones who's been fortunate enough to have had made a fair bit out of it, you know, and I'm not saying that I've got anything now, I've got to put this in, you know what I mean? But to say that I have, fight-wise, I've had some decent purses, and I've had, and especially a massive thing that has helped me has been, I think I've always done well off face value, going to meet people myself and dealing with people and getting sponsorships off my own back, you know, and in that sense, I've always just been a go-getter that way, you know. I thought, right, well, it's not obtainable to be able to fight for this long and do this without being helped. So it's been like, right, I'm going to message this company, write a bit about myself, go and see these people, meet people, and just, and that's been, as we were saying earlier, you know, about the sponsorship, that's helped us massively, you know, like, I've been really fortunate to land some decent ones that had helped me be able to, and especially my missus as well has helped us out loads, you know, when I've been in a struggle, she's kind of been the driving force that's kind of had me back in places when I've been stuck, you know. I feel like if it's a accumulation of things that kind of help you get there, you know. Obviously off my own back, being lucky that have landed some decent sponsors, but it is possible, you know. And there's a few guys, I mean, for how many people are involved in it now, it's tough, you know what I mean? But there is, if you believe in yourself and you believe you can do it, then fucking mate, like by all means, don't let someone say you can't, you know.
A former student of mine, Ryan Scope, you know what I mean?
Trained with Ryan for years.
I mean, like you say, Ryan's good lad, you know, great lad. And I mean, I taught Ryan from being, I think it was about 10 till he was about 18, you know what I mean? And like sort of Ryan was just a phenom at the time. Like, I mean, still is now, you know, he's an absolute beast. And I do think, you know, like sort of opportunities arise and stuff like that for certain people. And like we mentioned before about Ross Pearson and stuff like that, you know, doing really well, and yourself doing really well. And it's nice to hear, you know, like sort of, especially to like sort of some of the students that like sort of, they want to be fighters. Like we've got a couple of people who train with us and stuff like that, and they want to fight professionally, you know what I mean? And they've got the opportunity to, and like I was saying before, we've got some absolute animals, you know what I mean? And they're just sitting on the sidelines waiting, but you know, and they start getting that itchy feet and they want to start to go and stuff like that. And then you hear these people turn around going, well, you know, you're not going to make it out of it. And you turn and go, but you can.
That's it.
You know, and to hear someone like yourself saying you can, this is proof in the pudding, guys. You don't have to just take me.
No, that's it.
You know what I mean? This is the proof here, you know?
That's it, definitely. You can, mate, and that's what I mean. I mean, for the most part, I think the difference is, right, mate, and I think this is the brutal honesty of it is, I think if you're getting into fighting to try, because you see, that's what I mean about the Conor McGregor thing, you're looking at that and you see him driving the fucking Rolls Royce and you see him with the fucking flash watches and you see that and think, well, I want this. And I feel like if you're getting into something, especially as brutal as fighting to try and make money, you fucking may as well quit when you're there. Get into fighting because you want to learn into fighting, because you enjoy it, and the money will come from you just enjoying the training. You know, as I was saying earlier about being happy in training. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Don't be wanting a quick buck out of it, because you're not going to get a quick penny from fucking. You could be a pro for years, you know what I mean, and still get off a fucking less than a grand to fucking try out and fight. You know, it's not a quick way to earn money. It's a brutally fucking tough and cruel and unfair game, you know what I mean? But if you dedicate yourself and enjoy it and actually like what you're doing, before you know it, you'd be fighting or taking these chances. Oh, well, hang on a minute, I'm going to fight this guy. I might not be financially fucking making a load of money, but look at the opportunity I get from it. You know, I get to fly to another part of the world and fight and get an experience. And before you know it, them experience open, it's networking, and they'll open another door, and it's just, that's the way it goes. And then it can come from that, you know. It's about loving it's about dedicating it and loving the craft, and money will come from that.
I've said this over and over again with the likes of our business, and we've got a personal training studio in Sackerson. And I keep saying to the lad, he works with us, called Ben Skirk Fitness, by the way, guys, really good guy.
Yeah.
And he constantly sort of says, do you know anyone in marketing and stuff like that? And I turn around and yeah, I do. But like someone like Ben, for instance, he's a male model, right? So he's a proper good looking bastard, right? He's tall, handsome, and blinking everything, right? And then I'm like small and stocky and bald. You know what I mean? And yet, thanks, Cal. You know what I mean?
I'm fucking bald as well. I've got massive fucking big ears.
But you know the yeah, I'm going to say what I was going to say. But anyway, no, the whole point of it is like sort of with our PT gym, I'm busy literally 12 hours a day, majority of the time, and I could work that 7 days a week, you know. And the reputation is good at what we do because, like, you know, again, if you've got the right people and you network with the right people and you get the rapport and you get the like sort of, you just have to be yourself. And like, you know, when you like, you know, like you do these podcasts and they realize, you know, that this guy can tear your face off, you know what I mean? And yet he's mint crack, you know what I mean? And then you've got some guys like, you know, I'm flipping fighting me, like, you know what I mean? And you stand there and you're going, oh. And it's like sort of, you know, like, it's one of the best things I ever heard in my life, right? I was in my local bar in Stanley Hilltop, and I was stood at the bar and I ordered a pint, and I'm stood in these two lads, and they had the tap out t-shirts on, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, that tap out t-shirts, that means the cage fighters, you know what I mean? So obviously, like, you know, and then they turned around and they were like, aye, you know, and he turned around again, I says, what you do like? And he turned around and just made again, I said, well, I've just been grappling, haven't I? He went, nice, where have you been grappling? He went, Ian Freeman's place. I was like, no. He says, aye. And he says, done all right, like. I says, aye. And like, anyway, they're just chatting away there, and he turned around, and anyway, he goes, I'm going to go kickboxing tomorrow. He goes, where at? He says, well, he says, I think I'm going to go and see that Alan Craig.
Aye.
So I'm stood right next to him, right? He goes, aye. He says, but, you know, he says, I've been warned, like, you know, he's like, you know, he's a bit of an extremist when it comes to training and that, like, you know, it's pretty hard on that. He says, aye. He says, aye. He says, have you seen him before? He says, oh, aye. He's 6'3", right? He's got brown hair. He's like that. And I'm still looking at the lad here, the ball, and he goes, I'm 6'3", I've got brown hair, you know what I mean? And then here, you know what I mean? I'm 5'7" on a good day, you know what I mean? I was like, this is mint, you know?
Air Force One.
That's it, right? With blinking heels, you know what I mean? Just so I can get that 6 foot. So I turned around, I was like, oh my God, you know, so I had said out, you know. So I thought, anyway, I'll wait until the next day, you know, see if they actually turn up. Anyway, he turned up. So he walked in, he goes, all right. I says, aye. He says, I'm after Alan Craig.
Can you go and get him?
I says, me. He goes, you? And I says, aye. I says, I'm on. And I says, someone told me the other day, he says, like, and I says, you're like, the offense, look taller. And I was like, aye. I says, I'm a midget, like, you know what I mean? And he goes, aye. He says, aye, fair enough. Like, he says, I've done a bit of training. I've been Ian Freeman's place. I do boxing. I've had a few fights. Well, I've had one fight. I was like, right, okay. He says, and done a bit kickboxing. You know what I mean? He says, but I didn't think I'm like, you know, up to that standard. He says, but I'm all right. He says, I can hold my own. He says, I won my fight. I says, oh, where'd you fight? He goes, you know, with them charity ones. It's like, oh, aye, right, aye, lovely, aye. I says, right, everyone's going to stop him. So I'm like, aye. He says, you know, he says, I just want to learn. And I says, right, coming in. I says, like, you know, get your gloves on. We'll do this, and crack on. So anyway, he's on the bags and he's, and I'm standing looking. I thought he couldn't box eggs, you know what I mean? He's done big kickboxing. So anyway, I was like, right. And he's done, you know, with Ian Freeman up in Machine MMA there. And I thought, aye. And he's had this charity boxing fight. I was like, aye. And then by the end of the session, he was going to have a charity boxing fight. He didn't have it. He was going to. He had one training session up at Machine MMA. He'd had one kickboxing session, which is the session that I was teaching him. And the boxing session, he went twice. And, you know, like it just, you know, when they have this like sort of aura of like sort of I'm this, you know, and then he came out and he was like, well, you know, I've had this, and you get completely humbled, don't you? You know what I mean? And this is the one thing that like sort of, and you know, I couldn't be nasty to the lad because he generally was a nice lad, and you know, like sort of, we said to him, I says, you know, you come back, and he's like, no, he said, I don't think I'll be come back. He says, it's a bit too much for me, like. And I was like, fair enough, mate. He was honest and open with that, you know.
Yeah.
And I just think, you know, the stigma of like sort of being a fighter to the interpretation of a fighter, you know what I mean? It's like it's two total different things, you know.
I can't remember. It might even be C.T. Fletcher, and there's a quote, and it's everybody wants to be a beast.
Yeah.
Until it's time to do what a beast has to do. You know? It's that kind of thing, isn't it? You know.
Old Tom Foster, who owned the Hilltop, had some of the best sayings I've ever known. And one of the ones he turned around, he said to me, he says, you're not drinking milk. It doesn't taste very nice what we do. And it's true, you know, that they love the look of it, you know what I mean, until they actually taste it, and then they realize this is some hard shit. This is horrible, you know. It is nasty, you know. And I love that saying, you know, I live life by old sayings, you know. And like sort of that's what this tattoo on my arm says. Yeah, it's a Japanese quote. And it says, the true warrior enters the arena with all its powers at the ready.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So in other words, you don't cut corners.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I was always privileged with, you know what I mean? I say to my students on a regular basis, I did not cut corners. I couldn't cut corners.
Yeah.
I think I was one of the first fighters in the day who got sponsored by a proper supplement company who had proper dietitian behind them and stuff like that. And it was 2006, 2007. And I was always in good shape. But then when the nutrition side of things came in and stuff like that, I went in an unbelievable shape, you know. And in them days, we were fighters. We weren't athletes, you know. We you done what you did. You're sitting in Epsom salts bath, like, you know, night before you weigh and literally dying, you know what I mean? And then going in the sauna the next morning, if you missed, then you skipped a bit, you know, and then you were just like, whereas nowadays, you know, you're monitoring water and you know, everything's like sort of itemized out. And it's what I try to say to my students all the time, you know, like people like yourself who you are a fighter, but you're also an athlete, you know what I mean? The difference between like sort of the elite sorry, I'm going to rephrase it. The difference between an amateur and a professional is this much.
Yeah.
But it's this much faster, this much fitter, this much agile, this much stronger.
Percentages.
And then it comes into this much. It's a massive amount. And what people don't realize is the time and effort it takes to get that much better. Yeah. 100%. You know what I mean? And when people like sort of look at like sort of my philosophy in life, you know, there's no such thing as can't, only try.
Yeah.
You know, so I kind of do it. How do you know you can't do it? Have you tried it? And it does my head in, you know what I mean? And I'll say, you know, the amount of people on the first lesson come to me and they have to learn a spinning back kick. And they'll look at us and go, spinning back kick. And I said, throw the fucking spinning back kick. Step your foot across, turn your back, look over your shoulder, fire the kick.
Yeah.
And they'll go, why? And I say, because if you can do that in your first lesson, what else can you do in like your 6th, 7th, 8th lesson? You know, all of a sudden then you just become this. You know what I mean? Now you know you've got actually quite a high skill technique under your belt on your first day. I'm not saying you're going to be world champion, but it's going to build that confidence so much by being able to do something.
Fear factor of feeling,
and having that like sort of, you know, having that sort of person who obviously I've got the privilege to speak to, you know, who's in the elite category of elites. You know what I mean? I mean, you've got to think, you know, like sort of a lot of my students listen to me and they're like, you know, I waffle a lot, you know, I have what I call mat chats, you know what I mean? I'll sit down, I'll just explain to folks. And you see some people are interested, but then you see some people are looking at the sky. And that's when I know I'm waffling a bit too much, you know what I mean? And I'm like, remember, kids, don't take drugs, you know what I mean? And like that, hey, you know, what'd you do the weekend, space cake? And you know, like so, you know, like sure, well. And like so, I just say constantly, like it's one of them things though. You try to give people the best advice, and sometimes, you know, sometimes it's best coming from somebody else, but somebody who's in. He's in it, you know. He's doing it. It's the horse's mouth right here, really. You know what I mean? And like, you know, I hope all my students, like, you know, out there listening to what Carl says in a sense of, because you know. This guy's done it. He fights on one of the biggest shows in the world, and yet he's just like us. You know, you talk, You know, you act on impulse. You know what I mean? You crash cars. You know what I mean? You just crashed a car. You know what I mean?
Too. It's in advantage,
right? You know, like sort of the cracks there, man. Then it's mint. You know, and I love that. I love the fact that someone, you know, can take so much, like sort of. They can take the mick out of themselves so much. They're so human, rather than like, you know, stand on this pedestal, you know. And I always remember, quickly one before we finish there, is I was in this course, and it was a Jeff Thompson course, right? So watch my back and bouncer story. But Jeff Thompson wasn't taking the course. It was some of his students, and you were paying £80 to go to this. And then they had these things called animal days, and in them days it was like, you know, the ultimate blinking sparring sessions, and you were going to get killed in these sessions, you know, because it was animal day. So me training partners and that went down, and bearing in mind, I mean, some of my training partners were absolute animals, like, you know, and it was the British Kyokushinkai squad went down, like few of the lads from there, a couple of lads who've done MMA, a couple of lads who were like judo lads. And I always think judo lads especially are very underestimated. You know, they're like the rugby player of martial arts. They're just so rough, you know, and strong, and just like monk strength, you know. You know, like that strong day.
That's it. I just strong day, just
they get a hood, like this. You know, it's like the Hulk with flipping Loki, go back to comics, you know what I mean? They just toss you about, you know what I mean? They're just so naturally tough, you know. And but they all seem so nice, you know. They've got such a lovely way of going about, because it's classed as a sport. You know, they're more like, so it's just a sport, it's a game, you know. You smash each other all over the place for a game, you know, and then you get a pint afterwards. It's mint, you know. But we went this animal day, and it was shit. It was like so overrated, you know, like, so, and not to disrespect anything, but it was, you know. We trained harder in our gyms, you know, in our training sessions. And set the wall, and you're going to do 3 minutes of wall sits. All right. So 3 minutes of wall sits. But they give you it at the beginning. So when you're fresh, they give it at the end when you're tired.
And that's when it is.
You know, you know, but it was, they've done everything the wrong way around. There's no programming, you know what I mean? But anyway, to cut a long story short, the best one was when the guy came, and at that time I was having a bad day, you know what I mean? I was having a real bad day. I'd split up with an ex, and blah, 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 and the usual shit. And anyway, he turned and he says, we're going to assess your fear. Jeff Thompson's book called Fear. If you'd done that, I'd have been legging it, you know, 100% frightened, you know what I mean? And we're going to assess your fear. Jeff Thompson's book, you know, assesses fear and all that sort of thing. And I was like, bearing in mind, one of my, like, sort of, my master's in sports psychology, you know. So I was like, interesting, you know what I mean? And anyway, puts on his 20-ounce glove, and he goes, right, I'm going to smack her in the face, right? I'm going to see, like, your flinch resistance. And I went, flinch resistance? And he went, yeah. I don't know, you know, like, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like, I fucking out, huh? You know what I mean? I've assessed your fear, and exactly that you're frightened of getting hit. Everyone's frightened of getting fucking hit. You're going to stand running down. You know, you're married. What? Loved it, you know. And you do. You get some numpty in the gym who goes, I love getting hit me. And you're like, come here, John, Mr. Knockout Specialist, hit him, see if he likes it now. You know what I mean? Whack. Yeah. You didn't like it now, do you? Not really, like, you know. And that's what they were doing. They were lining us all up, and there was guys on this course, and there was about 40 guys on this course. And this guy was going to walk down this leg, and he was punching everyone in the face.
It's fucking Trisha from fucking the supermarket's going around.
So I'm stood there, and I'm looking down the line like that, and I'm going,
putting your gum filled in the slide.
I was like, what the hell? And anyway, he's walking down, whack, and some of these people are letting it happen, you know. And it was like, you just step back and go, no. Or you take the bat. And anyway, I could see he was 2 away from me, and I'm looking, and I was like this, he's not fucking hitting me. And he came up and whacked this lad next to us, and this lad, I mean, he was one of these skinny young ones, you know, who came with his dad to do a course with Jeff Thompson. And even though Jeff Thompson didn't turn up, you know what I mean? And it was 80 quid like a course, you know?
He couldn't
to get a whack, to get a whack in the jaw. And he walked to me, I says, you fucking lift that hand up. I said, I'll bite your fucking nose off. And he went, huh? And I turned around and I says, you think you're smacking me in that fucking face? I says, to fuel an ego, to assist my fear. I says, you get out in like psychology, how like that? And he goes, no, but I've been trained by Jeff Thompson. I says, is he a psychologist? He goes, nobody's wrote a book about fear. I says, I could write a fucking book about fear. You are frightened. Alan Craig, author. You know what I mean? You are not frightened, Alan Craig, author. You know, I says, it's bullshit, man. I says, no. I says, you raise that hand and hit me. I said, I'll fucking kick fuck out you. I said, I swear to God. I said, this is bullshit. I said, you know this. In fact, I says, where's my fucking money? I said, guess that. So anyway, I had a little blinking tantrum, like, you know what I mean? A huff and all that sort of thing. So one of the other instructors, I can't remember his name, came over and he was like, what's your problem? Like, I says, what's your fucking problem? I says, your ego is punching people. You know what I mean? And making, I says, making yourself feel better. I says, and you can assess someone's fear by punching them in the face. Yeah? If they didn't want to get punched, now they're frightened. I says, no one wants to get punched.
For sure,
I says, right. So anyway, the argument went on. The lads who came, they all said the same. So anyway, it was, you were all frightened, you didn't want to get hit. I says, right. I says, we didn't want to get hit, but we've done your animal day. We've kicked fuck out you like all over the shop, right? And at the end, we just didn't fancy standing and letting you have a free bat. Do you know what I mean? I says, that's what it is. It's not frightened. You know what I mean? I says, I'll tell you what. I says, in fact, we'll settle this now. Let me put the glove on and I'll assess your fear because I've got a fucking master's in psychology. I says, sports psychology. And he goes, what? I says, aye. So you hit me. I says, fine. I says, then we can all hit you. He went, I don't want to get fucking hit. He says, no, that's not the way it works. I says, fear. You're getting frightened. He goes, no. I says, you fucking are. He goes, not. I says, you are. He goes, I'm flipping not. I swear to God, I'm not. I don't have to put up this shit. He walked away. So they're like that. So who's walked away? Like, it was like, you know, and it was just ego, you know what I mean? This ego. And like, this is again the thing that I say about like sort of people like yourself. There's no ego here, you know what I mean? And like, you know, you the people you've been up against, the training that you've done, the style of your fighting, which is like, I think it's fabulous. You know, it's a very exciting style of fighting that you have. And it's but it's right though, you know. I mean, like you've got someone like Fisher who's just gritty and tough, haven't you? You know what I mean? He's just bang, bang, bang. You're very like, you know, you're very slick, and I like slick, you know. Someone like Ryan who's like very like sort of, he's very flowery. He's next one of my students, you know. He like he's flicking flowery kicks. I keep hitting them, so you know, that's me flowery, man. You know what I mean? And you know, it's lovely to see like sort of the contrast between people in styles and stuff like that, which is why again Callum style fighting system is why we call it Craig style fighting system. Your fighting system suits your needs, and exactly how what you said earlier on about being the boxers who turn more grappling, who now actually more grappling than boxing, but you know, like use boxing to set stuff. It's fabulous, and it's interesting to see because again, when I have people come in and say, "What type of fight do you think I'm going to be?" and I say, "I've got no idea."
I've got no idea.
Yeah, we've just got to find out. You know, and I appreciate the blinking the time to come on your podcast.
Oh no, mate, honestly, I massively appreciate you coming on. As I said earlier, not to cut it short, we've got any other opportunity. If you let's do it. You know what I mean? It's been a pleasure for me to hear your stories, especially looking forward to the book coming out as well.
Yeah, for sure, mate.
Give that a read, mate.
The Great White Hopeless. I mean, what I'll do is I've got it an email. I'll just send you it by email,
and then I'll make sure I'll read more for you as well. I really appreciate that.
Thank you very much, mate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.